Can our EFCA churches do something about the world's increasing separation, animosity, and hostility? Absolutely, yes, our churches can do something about it. Hello, EFCA family. This is Carlton Harris here, and we were all together just a few weeks ago at EFCA One in West Des Moines, Iowa. What I'd love to do is just remind you, and those of you who are watching who were not with us, that as I preached in the last session, I presented a call to our movement to identify by name and pray for 3 individuals who need the gospel as we live on mission together. Well, to refresh our memories, we're going to play a brief clip from my sermon at EFCA One. Can our EFCA churches do something about the world's increasing separation, animosity, and hostility? Absolutely, yes, our churches can do something about it. How? Be a unified and diverse church to reach a divided and diverse world. I want you to do something that has to do with the number 3. We've had 3 scenes. I want you to think of 3 people. 3 people you know who do not yet believe the gospel of Jesus Christ. It might be your neighbor. It could be someone from the gym or your hairstylist or your auto mechanic or your kid's soccer coach. It might be one of your children. I have one of those. I pray for my kid and their spouse with my wife every night. It might be your sister or your brother, or maybe it's your doctor. As your eyes are closed, I want you to look into their eyes. And I want you to think about the indescribable pain of their eternal separation from God that will go on forever and ever. I want you to feel it. I want you to sit in that. And now I want you to pray for the salvation of those 3 people by name and ask God to give you opportunities and the guts and the courage to tell them about Jesus, your first love, and share the gospel with them. I want to ask you to go back to your churches and ask them to do the same. I want you some Sunday soon as a church to have everyone who names the name of Jesus name 3 people for whose salvation they're going to pray, and they're going to courageously and boldly speak Jesus to them as their only hope in life and death. And they're going to pray and pray and pray for them by name between now and our next EFCA One. Can you imagine how many people would come to faith in Jesus potentially if our unified and diverse 1,600 congregations did that? Will you please join me in doing that and join me in this great gospel adventure? Let's go tell others about the one who has set us free. Let's live a life together that is biblical and missional, united and free. And so we've gathered together in this conversation 3 leaders from various aspects of the Evangelical Free Church of America. We have Tim Jacobs, who serves as EFCA West District Superintendent, as well as lead pastor of Mountain Life Church in Park City, Utah. We have Amy Medina, who serves ReachGlobal our international missions arm as Associate Director of Engage. And we also have Brad Wass, who is a church planner of the multi-ethnic Ambassador City Church in my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri. And so welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining me for this brief conversation as we look back and reflect on our time together in June. And you may remember that as I was closing, I gave a space and an invitation for us to think in terms of three people within our spheres of influence and relationship, and gave you time to just pause and for us to be still before God and to think of those names and faces and to pray for the salvation of those people and commit ourselves to do what we can to introduce them to Jesus, to have the courage to do that, to have the winsomeness to do that, to have the commitment to the Great Commission to do that. So as you think about that call, and here we are 2 months out now, what thoughts do you have about that? How has that resonated with you? How is it fitting into your flow of life and ministry? How's that played out for you personally?
Well, Carlton, what I loved about the whole challenge that you offered was the fact that you're defining our culture as EFCA. And yes, you mentioned we're biblical, but we're also missional. And I think if I could say, for us, it's going to be easier to be biblical than it is to be missional. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's easy for us to focus on preaching the word, teaching the word, because that's what we're trained to do. It's harder to get out because it's in that category of the old, it's important, but it doesn't always feel urgent. And so for you, I think to characterize as our leader, this is a priority for us and help us recapture that impulse that we started with and that it should be a non-negotiable for us. And so I think for me as a district superintendent, it's a beautiful thing because as I look around at our churches, I see so many churches that are being faithful to the Word of God, that are so concerned about making sure that the theology is true and correct. And yet what I'm hoping to see and what we're shooting for and trying to see more of is that missional impulse among our churches, because we have a ton of changing communities demographically. People are moving in, people are moving out. And we have got to have individual churches that are creating the cultures necessary to be able to reach people with the gospel that are far away from God. And also, as a district superintendent, it gives me the ability to say, hey, well, you heard the call, you heard the challenge. So what are we doing about it? We want to see new people who are far from God coming into the fold, joining our churches, being ones who embrace the gospel someday. Because listen, the fact of the matter is, someday, who is going to take our place? Who are going to be the next church leaders, the next missionaries going to South Africa, the next people? We have got to be praying to the Lord of the harvest to bring people in, and not just praying, but moving, acting, risking, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's great.
Carlton, I loved that you gave us that challenge. I feel like what you were essentially asking us to do was to be intentional Christians. And I think that intentionality is so important in American Christian culture right now because of cultural factors that are actually pulling people apart. So, you keep hearing the reports about how isolated people are. People don't talk to each other anymore. They don't have the same kind of connections that previous generations did. And I think we all feel that. And then on top of that is just the other factor that our culture is very anti-religion and very much feeling like religion should be private and personal. And so I think that we all feel those tensions on us of the isolation and then just the cultural expectation that we're not going to talk about spiritual things. And so even though we'll say, oh yeah, we're missional, it isn't going to happen unless we're intentional about developing those relationships with unbelievers. That's a lot harder than developing relationships with people that are within our own tribe. And we also have to recognize that those relationships aren't just going to happen usually, unless we're intentional about it, unless we're putting it on our calendar to invite those people over, unless we're making time to say, I'm going to invite this person out to coffee. Like, those kinds of things aren't going to happen without intentionality. And so I think that constantly having that reminder in front of us of what does it mean to be missional? It means taking the initiative to be intentional about developing relationships. It's just something we need to be reminded of all the time. And so I feel like your reminder was fantastic, very encouraging. One thing that my husband and I recently started doing, because we host a home group in our home, and it's all believers, it's all people from church, but bringing this up with them regularly, saying, okay, who are the people you're praying for? Who are the unbelievers in your life that you are intentionally pursuing relationships with? And it is awkward conversation. But I think it's so important, because otherwise it doesn't happen. We just are so comfortable in our own little Christian spaces. And maybe we'll go out and do a good deed here and there. We'll go and volunteer for something, or donate some money to something, or, spend Thanksgiving serving meals and think that's enough, when really it's not enough. We need to be intentionally pursuing those relationships with the goal of being able to share Jesus.
Wow. Thank you, Amy. I love that. I love what you're doing with your small group. May your tribe increase. May we see that in small groups all around the EFCA and in churches all around the EFCA. Imagine what it'll be like if you could walk up to any EFCA person and say, give me your 3 names that you're praying for. So thank you for doing that and bringing that kind of a zeal for living missionally into your small group space. Thank you so much, Amy. Brad.
What a Master City's been doing this summer, even after the EFCA One met, was we've been doing evangelism at 2 big international markets, Pan-Asian market and also Middle East market. So we've been intentionally training people to learn how to be able to share their faith in a very natural, relational way over a meal with people that work in the restaurants. So the other side of this is not just the 3 people that we were praying for, but we now have, as a result of EFCA One, we are moving to hire 3 church planters. So not only the 3 unbelievers, but how can we have 3 pastors that intentionally we are planting churches in St. Louis? That's it.
So as a follow-up to that, what words would you have or suggestions for those within our movement, both within Reach Global and here in the U.S., for really taking this vision of praying for 3 people and making it come to life and breathe life into it in our churches, in our small groups, on our missions teams, the places where we have influence as leaders within our movement, and you're all leaders within our movement.
I think Quentin Steve's comment in his sermon that just moved my heart was the responsibility that we have for the spiritual well-being of an entire city, not just our church, but for the city. And how do we see us engaging the unreached, yes, but also engaging those that think they're reached in our city?
Yeah, Brad, I think that's a really good insight, and it gets us outside of thinking about the 4 walls of our individual churches. The other part of that too, I think, is the old phrase, "What gets rewarded gets repeated," and so it's what do we celebrate? And I think so from even like an EFCA perspective, district superintendents, even the EFCA national, as this vision is lived out, there's examples that are seen, there's people who are coming to faith, and then saying, hey, this, like pointing that out and recognizing that and saying, hey, look, because I think people want to know and feel that they're a part of something that's making a difference in the world. And so when you cast a vision out there, that's one thing, but then as people are actually seeing fruit from it, and then we just stay at it, and you are tenacious with it. It has a line item in your budget. It has space on Sunday mornings. space in your whatever communications you have on your website. Like, this is something that you just drill into the consciousness of people, so that it doesn't necessarily seem so foreign. And it's not foreign, because we say all the time, well, we should be reaching people. And what I like is to hear about, and even in the church that I lead, is I don't want to get up every week and say, we need to be reaching people. I don't want to do that. I want to tell stories of people that are being reached, right? I want to be able to watch them get baptized and hear them share their testimony and say, look, this is what happens. And so it is a contagious thing. So I think so many times we're aspirational and, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And it's so awesome when you see the actual, when stuff is happening and there are the stories that characterize, and then all of a sudden people go, hey, this is what we do. Part of what we do is, we want healthy churches and we're all about these, but we just reach people. And our churches are here's how our churches are reaching people. Here's how the individual members of our churches are the risks they're taking, the ways they're being sent, not just to the far ends of the earth, but, as we talked about, to the neighborhoods, because that's just way harder. It's way harder to invest in relationships that are going to be around for a while, So in any case, I think those are some things that can be done, and some approaches that can be had of just trying to keep it continually at the forefront of people's minds.
I feel like EFCA One, and hearing Pastor Quentin speak, was actually a great example to all of us of how to make this practical. I loved how Pastor Quentin talked about how Valley Church acts as a community center. Now, that is a church that has a community center, which is pretty unusual for a church and not something that most churches are able to do. But any church can have the attitude of being a community center and being a place that draws people in because they know that they're going to get needs met, because they know that they're going to find people there who care about them and who want to build relationship with them. And I also love how Pastor Quentin said that the things that the church does are important, but really what they're meant to be is training ground for their people to go do this in their own communities, in their own neighborhoods, to do the same thing in their own communities. And I loved that example of that, to say, okay, the church is just showing you how to do this in your own world. And so I think that what I saw at Valley and what I heard them talk about was a perfect example of how we can put into practice, how any church can put into practice what we learned.
I guess I'll just tie a bow in that question by just extending just a simple call to every EFCA church, every EFCA leader of influence, to personally jot down the names of 3 people and start praying for them and encourage everyone over whom they have influence, with whom they have influence, to do the same, and follow up with those people and ask them if they've done it, and just be that simple and that practical as well, in addition to what you guys have shared. If we would all commit to do that, all of our local churches, all of our ReachGlobal leaders, imagine the difference that could make in a very short period of time. I'm so appreciative to you, Tim, to you, Brad, to you, Amy, for taking time out of your busy schedules to join me just as we reflect and look back. I think a biblical theme is that's throughout the pages of Scripture is that we forget, but God calls us to remember. And I think it's good sometimes just to pause and remember and look back and reflect, and not just leave a wonderful EFCA One conference. We're sky high, we're excited, we're fired up, and then we go back and within weeks, it's just business as usual, and we've forgotten. And so hopefully the Lord will be pleased to use this conversation to restir our 4 hearts, as well as the hearts of those who were with us in West Des Moines and those who did not have that privilege to just think about living on mission and taking the gospel to 3 people within their sphere of relationship. So thank you all for joining me today for this conversation. May our gracious God bless you and smile on you for what you've given to me in this gift, presence.